Well, welcome everyone. Joshua Severe Weather. Appreciate you joining me here on this Monday afternoon. I'm a meteorologist in the Raleigh area. And for those of you that are Joshua Severe Weather regulars, I apologize for kind of being off the air here for a little bit. Been a lot of travel this time of the year for my work. But the good news is that this week, if you are traveling, we're not going to be talking about much in the way of winter weather, snowstorms across the south or even the east. Things are quickly reversing from what we've had over the last several weeks, and that is that the brutal cold is retreating up into parts of the Northeast and especially Canada and the Intermountain West. Whereas those of us in the South are going to start to feel a little bit more like early spring here in the coming days. Now, with springtime, or at least early springtime weather, comes the threat for more rain and maybe some severe weather. And we do have a significant storm that we're going to be tracking that is going to be moving from California and the Southwest today across the southern and eventually eastern part of the country here towards the middle and second part of the week. And that's going to bring us some new threats. So this video is going to explore those threats and kind of give you an idea of who can expect what and how much and when it's going to impact you. So currently temperatures are actually really not that bad considering how it's been throughout the month of January. The exception, of course, being across central Canada and the Intermountain West, but temperatures have warmed into the 40s and 50s across the south, even back into the 70s in Orlando. Where was that when I was there last week? Literally, it rained for 3 days and it was 41 degrees. It was miserable. Reminded me of what it's like here typically in North Carolina this time of the year. That's how it felt, but we're back into the 60s in New Orleans. So a lot of that snow is going to be melting. And you can see over the last 24 hours, temperatures have warmed considerably, especially across the central United States and into Quebec and eastern portions of Canada. So we are seeing an end to the brutal cold and a return to more typical temperatures here for late winter, maybe February and early March over the coming days. Now, the good news is that the map is relatively quiet. The bad news is that we still have significant weather to track. For those of you in the lake effect areas of upstate New York and northwestern Pennsylvania, we do have winter storm warnings off of Ontario and advisories and high wind advisories around Lake Erie and Lake Huron and Lake Superior as well. And in California, the rain was very much needed, but some of us got a little bit too much of that, some heavy mountain snow. So we are seeing a reduction in the fires very quickly, but we're also seeing mudslides in a few areas. The good news, if you want to call it that, is that the pattern over the next few weeks allows us to see a little bit more in the way of rain and less in the way of dry air and high winds. So we're stepping our way in the right direction. We're not there yet, but we are seeing some improvement. And in the ski areas in Southern California, we're seeing more moisture as snow is expected to continue to fall. You can see, and I'll zoom in here to show that to you, but we do in fact have still some winter storm warnings for those higher elevations here between LA and the Inland Empire, as well as in the upper desert here. And we do have winter weather advisories across some of the middle elevations here of Southern California and for portions of northwestern Arizona as well, close to the rim country. So our upper level map shows us our storm system here is continuing to spin through Southern California. It is going to get kicked eastward here over the coming days. And we do have cold air that is coming in from the central United States and central Canada in particular into the central US. So it is going to turn chillier here from northwest to southeast. But unlike last week when we had this big storm across the south, this time the cold air is not going to link up with it. So as a result, we are going to see the cold come and go, and then the warmer weather and the more moist weather come. And rather than the two linking up for a big winter storm, instead we're talking about more rain than anything else. So I'm going to break down what's to be expected here, and this is a look at the upper atmosphere showing that big upper level low in the southwest. You see the fast flow across the polar regions here moving into the northeast. Those two are not going to link up and merge. So the flow continues out of the northwest, sending that cold down into the northeast through the middle of this week. But our next system here is taking its sweet time and will finally make its way eastward here by Thursday and Friday. And as it does so, we do see increasing southerly and southwesterly flow aloft, meaning we have the Gulf and we've got the Pacific to send more moisture northward. And we have an increase in winds here, allowing for storms to likely have some wind damage with them due to the fact that these winds are up to 140 and 150 miles per hour. So if you are planning to board a flight from Dallas to St. Louis, you are definitely going to get there quicker, but I think it'll be a bumpy ride here on Thursday night. As the system moves eastward, you'll see that it opens up into a trough, and then we have what's called zonal flow from west to east. And what this does is it keeps the really cold air out of the United States. And actually, we have a ridge of high pressure that takes over here for the beginning of February. And so, really, the brutal cold that we've had for 4 to 5 weeks is beginning to finally come to an end. And we're heading more into a milder pattern here for the final month of meteorological winter here in February. I know technically winter still goes into March, but for meteorological purposes, February 28th is the end, and that is only about 32 days away. Here's a look at the European model, and I'm sorry about that, hit the wrong button. And you can see that we do have some cold coming into eastern Canada, a piece of the polar vortex moving through Quebec. And so we do have a boundary bringing some snow tonight into tomorrow. And some of these will produce some squally conditions and low visibility. So it will not be great travel in parts of the interior of the Northeast or east of the Great Lakes. There'll also be another clipper type system that brings snow from central Canada into the upper Great Lakes region here tomorrow. But aside from that, things are actually fairly quiet here. We have our storm in the southwest. Then we start to see things picking up in the south central states, in particular Texas and Oklahoma, when we get to later Wednesday night and Thursday. And this is when our threat for heavier rain and maybe severe weather return late Wednesday night into Thursday. And then that storm system is going to track east. And yes, there will still be some cold air to take a look at here in the Northeast, but the majority of the liquid from the storm, or the majority of the moisture from the storm, will fall in a liquid form rather than snow, like we saw here about a week or so ago. So as the storm system tracks east, it brings milder air up into the mid-Atlantic region and the Ohio Valley. Then it turns colder again. So yes, there will be some snow and sleet on the backside of it, but then it dries out and turns cold, and then we go back and forth again next week. So quite a difference from what we've been experiencing here over the last few weeks. Here's a look at temperature forecasts, and you can see there is a lot of cold up here, but it is basically being held in check across the Northeast and the upper Midwest. Remember, it was about 30 to 40 below zero in the Dakotas about a week ago. Now we're seeing temperatures climbing past freezing. That's a 60 plus degree warming trend from where we were about a week ago. So quite a bit more of a rise in temperature here, and well into the 40s in places like Calgary, Alberta, and 40 in Billings. It is still cold, though, in the mountains. We have 20s and 30s, and higher elevations will be below zero again tonight, parts of Wyoming and the ski areas. So good for the ski areas, but certainly cold there. And as a result of this Pacific flow, you can see that temperatures in the southern United States really don't drop off much. And if anything, they're going to start to moderate here by Wednesday and continue to warm by Thursday and Friday. And behind our next storm system, it really doesn't get all that cold, other than in northern New England, where we do get down below zero. We do have that shot of cold that comes into northern New England. But outside of that, much of the country is going to be around or even above the average mark here as we end the month of January and begin the month of February. Here's a look at the Northeast for today. You still see the cold lingering. But again, 37 in New York City here tonight. That's a lot better than where we were a week or so ago. 40s in Virginia. We are going to drop down tonight into the single numbers across upstate New York, northern New England. But the big cities are going to be around or above the freezing mark. As we move this forward here into the week, you can see it actually gets colder before it warms back up Tuesday into Wednesday. So there is definitely a cold air mass still lurking, but it's not going to make too much progress farther south. And if you get south of the Mason-Dixon line, or even south of the New York and Pennsylvania border, it really isn't all that bad. So we're not going to melt the snow quickly, but we are going to see that moderation, and that trend continues. As we head towards this weekend, it does get cold again, but then we bounce right back here early next week, in about a week from today. I want to shift your gear to the southwest here. You can see our storm system losing a lot of its punch here tonight, but we are going to see higher elevation snow in parts of southern Utah and northern Arizona. The rain does wind down in California, though, here shortly. As we move into tomorrow night, we will start to see an increase in moisture and southerly flow, meaning heavier amounts of snow in the Four Corners region by Wednesday morning. However, if you're in the desert Southwest or Southern Cal, looks like we're going to miss the majority of the rain that we really need to see. Now, I've seen reports of this system showing up on some of the models in a longer range a few days ago, showing a major storm in the high plains. They have generally backed off on that as they keep the cold air stuck in the Four Corners area. So in the mountains, certainly there is high snow potential, but when you get into western Oklahoma and Texas and western Kansas, not so much. So our winter weather impacts, while they're not limited, they are mainly going to be in the mountainous areas here, minor to moderate impact. A few spots will have some major impacts here over the next 3 days. I'll show you snow totals here, and you can see Flagstaff area, a few inches, rim country, several inches, and our higher amounts will be in southwest Colorado between now and Thursday night. Even the Denver area does have a chance of seeing a couple inches of snow. It should stay south of you in Salt Lake City and Reno and uh, Elko, Nevada, and Boise. Again, it's not been a very snowy winter in Salt Lake City. Even Denver hasn't seen a ton of snow since that very beginning of the season. And this system is mainly aimed to your south, so I would not promise you you're going to get much more than what you see on the map here. But I am going to give you a closer view of Colorado, and you can see between now and Friday evening, generally speaking, around an inch in Denver, more in the foothills and down towards Pikes Peak, and then the heavier amounts stay limited back here across the Sangre de Cristo range. So not a huge snowmaker for us. Now, if I show you the European farther east, you will see eventually this cold air does make its way in, but very limited in how much of that actually makes it to Texas and Oklahoma compared to what we were maybe looking at a few days ago. Now, the bigger challenge is going to be the rain that's coming, a lot of lightning coming, a lot of wind coming, and certainly the threat for some severe weather starting Wednesday night. You can see it's going to be a couple days of nasty rain across North Texas and eventually across Arkansas, Missouri, and the Mississippi Valley. Now, at this point, as I look at the storm track, it doesn't look like a repeat of the big tornado outbreak we saw between Christmas and New Year's, but it does still show heavy rain. It does still show the potential for some severe weather across this area. And I do think you need to be watching this closely if you're in central and eastern Texas, and if you're in western Louisiana, southern Arkansas, not just for the severe threat, but for the heavy rain threat as well. But this storm system is reminding me more of a springtime system than one we typically see in the middle of winter. So rain potential here, we're looking at 2 to 4 inches and locally higher amounts, North Texas, back to the triangle here, up to maybe a few inches around Little Rock into the Ozarks. So we are going to get some heavy rain here in the next couple of days, mainly Wednesday night, Thursday, and Thursday night. Areas on the Gulf Coast here that got all the snow will actually have less rain, but we will have that rain heavily melting that snow as well if there is even that much left. There may not be that much left. Here's where the rain potential looks to be the highest right now. DFW area, a few inches expected. There's some potential, at least if you look at the Euro, of maybe 4 or 5 inches in places to the east of Dallas and over towards Tyler. So about an hour east of DFW, this model shows the heaviest rain. But this could be wrong. It could still be in the DFW area. It could be west of you towards Weatherford, Cleburne, maybe. Could even be farther south in places like Waco and Round Rock. So we're going to have to wait and see how that works out for us here. Again, global models do give us a general idea of what's going to happen, but they do not give us specific details that we can take to the bank 3, 4, 5 days away. It's just not that good. Here's a look at the Europeans showing the lightning potential from this next system. And very little to talk about in the next 36 hours. But as we roll into Wednesday, you will see thunderstorms will start to fire up in the coastal bend and then in particular across East Texas and North Texas. Now, this is about midnight Wednesday night. You can see even more overnight. So a noisy night expected Wednesday night across Texas. And then this is going to shift eastward and for the most part stay south of OKC in those areas. But southern Arkansas, northwest Louisiana, Lake Charles by the end of Thursday. And then Thursday night around Baton Rouge, Lafayette, Natchez, up to Vicksburg and Jackson. And then things kind of crumble as this system encounters less instability and less strong wind aloft by Friday morning. So primarily looking at this area for our threat for some severe weather. Here's a look at what's called CAPE. This is the amount of storm fuel that's in place for us, convective available potential energy. It's not super high, but it's high enough to support some severe weather, as you can see here on Thursday. And then things very much get limited by the time we get on into Friday once the system makes its way farther to the east. Despite the lack of strong amounts of storm fuel, we've got enough. And we also have increasing wind flow here at the mid and low levels here. So as these winds pick up out of the south and southwest up to 65, 70 miles per hour at 850 millibars, we definitely can sustain a convective storm complex that can produce some widespread wind damage. The wind shear is high enough for a few tornadoes in here as well. And there could certainly be some hail as that colder air aloft moves in. But this is not a classic major tornado outbreak setup at this point. It's going to roll through here and then start to weaken when we get into Friday. As I take this into the southeastern United States, you are going to see that over time, as this storm system lifts north and east, the wind flow does start to dampen some. And by Friday afternoon, winds aloft are a lot weaker. So as this rolls east through Alabama, Georgia, into the Carolinas, the threat for severe weather continues to be on the wane. Doesn't mean we're not going to get any severe weather, but right now it's not a very high probability of severe weather the way that this storm is oriented. So right now, as we head into Wednesday, we do have an area of concern. It's mainly the hill country of Texas. We do have a marginal risk for severe weather, including hail and strong wind up to DFW and all the way to the Red River and all the way down into the Big Bend of Texas. Now, Thursday, for now, we only have a slight risk from San Antonio over to College Station and up to just south of DFW. However, I would not be shocked if this area grew a bit more to the right, or to the east, I should say, maybe all the way down to Houston, to Shreveport, to Texarkana. And if things come together a little bit better, we could see an upgrade coming to enhance risk at this point. I don't think we're going to be talking about anything beyond that, but again, things could still change. Later in the week, Friday and Saturday, though, right now we don't have enough of a strong signal for severe weather. Doesn't mean there can't be any, just the signal right now is not very high. And we're going to shift to the northeast and look at winter weather for the next couple of days. Buffalo area down to near Erie and the south towns here, south of Buffalo. We do have some storm impacts expected here. Moderate snowfall impacts, which can cause road challenges and low visibility. Same goes for east and north of Syracuse into the Tug Hill over the next couple of days. And snow totals through Wednesday are going to be coming up pretty quickly here to about a foot in the UP of Michigan and 1 to 2 feet around the Tug Hill and less than a foot around the Buffalo area. So taking you into New England as well and into parts of eastern Canada, we will see some snow on the north shore of Boston, maybe an inch on the Cape as well. Maine, some strange weather here between the earthquake earlier today and the fact that most of the snow goes to your south, and we're left with a pretty big snow hole in between. But outside of the mountains here, we're not really talking about much of any significance. So we continue to wait on the big one here in Philly and New York and Boston, and instead we just got clipped with what I would call a minor storm system. Now, backing things up here to the Ohio Valley, we're not really going to be talking about snow this week, but we are going to see heavier rains moving in to places like St. Louis, maybe Kansas City, southern and central Illinois and Indiana. But it's going to move through here pretty quickly. And then after the storm rolls through, we'll have to watch for some gusty winds in Indiana and western Ohio. And then on the very back side of this, maybe a little bit of wet snow mixed in across northern Illinois and southern Michigan. Again, we're not looking at any signal for a major amount of snow, but there's still a potential for this to potentially change. You can see with this upper level low here, if it ends up being a little stronger, a little bit farther north, there may be enough cold air to support a heavier burst of wet snow early on Friday in the lower Great Lakes region. So that's what I'll be tracking for you here in the upcoming week. Taking a look at rain potential. Generally speaking, we're talking an inch or two of rain. Very little snow at this point. Higher amounts will be from the Ozarks south and west. We'll have to keep an eye on West Virginia. We could get some heavier rains at this point, but we're not looking at widespread flooding. And then taking this off to the east here for you all to be able to see in the northeast, we are going to see some substantial rain as well, especially across upstate New York and across Maryland. In between, not quite that much moisture in place. And in the southeast, this is not really a massive rainmaker for us once we get east of Louisiana. We have some rain out there today, but then a break, and then the next wave comes through, but clicked a little too much for you. But through Friday night, early Saturday morning, most of the Florida Peninsula stays pretty dry or very light amounts of rain. Northwest Florida, southern Alabama, and Georgia, we're probably looking at just an inch or so of rain, which is pretty average for this time of the year. So, of course, we're going to track that more for you in coming videos. But taking a look at the upper air pattern moving forward here, you can see it's trending warmer and warmer. These brighter colors indicate high pressure ridging aloft. The colder colors are what we saw a lot of last week. Those have retreated. There will be pieces of energy to track here. You can see some cold comes down in a few different pieces early in February, but overall, this is a much milder stretch of weather after Groundhog Day and towards about President's Day here. We see a lot of the country that should be near or above average. Here's a look at temperature forecasts. These are anomalies, so anything in the red means warmer than average. Anything in the blue or green is colder than average. And you can see it's just not nearly as cold as it was here last week. In fact, it warms up even more for the end of the week over the eastern United States. There are shots of cold that come down, but they come and go. They're very fleeting here. Here's one for the first week of February. Then we get a breather, and then maybe another shot comes down around the 10th or so of February. Again, this is not major, but doesn't mean we can't have a winter storm either. Looking at rainfall potential, after this wet storm, things are pretty dry in the southeast, southern Cal in the southwest. Unfortunately, we head back to a drier pattern. And really, most of the rain is going to be aimed at Northern Cal, the Pacific Northwest, and the Northern Rockies. In fact, we could have significant amounts of rain here in the next couple of weeks in Northern Cal and Southwestern Oregon. Not going to be great if you're planning a golf trip to Bandon Dunes, for example. So that's what we're tracking here on the moisture front. And finally, looking at snow potential outside of this Clipper system and the Southwest system, it's really not much this week. We may get a little bit towards the end of the weekend across the lower lakes and the Northeast. The Northwest will see more snow this weekend. And then we just see it mainly clipping across the northern part of the country. The South, I don't think we're talking any significant snow. We may see a little bit in the mountains here and there, but really, this is quite a bit different looking than what we saw here over the last couple of weeks. If you're in the Northeast, there's still hope for a winter storm, but the closer you are to the coast, the less likely I think we're going to be talking about a big storm over the next couple of weeks. So that's really all I've got to share with you all. I've been gone for a while, and I don't know what's going on behind me here, but as always, I appreciate everybody's time, and I, as always, want to offer a quick word of encouragement through my Christian belief. Paul tells the Church of Rome, Romans 8:18, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope." And that is the good news I wanted to share with you, that God has given all the glory for everything that was created. And the sufferings that we have are nothing compared to what was done for us. And if you don't believe that, that's okay. You are still welcome here. There's no judgment involved here at all, because I was not a Christian until I was about 30 years old. But I will say this: knowing that eternal glory is waiting for me is the reason that I do everything that I do, including helping you all with videos on the weather, helping my friends, helping my coworkers and my family. It is to serve those because of what's been done for me. So I will catch up with you all again this week soon, and I hope everyone has a great Monday. God bless you.